Oh my goodness. Happy
Perfect.
Friday, everyone, and welcome to our latest installment of TMRG's Support Career Growth. Today, we're doing our division feature where we're going to be talking to one of our amazing VPs in the engineering division. But before I hop into all of that, I did want to make sure that you all were aware of the overall project, why we're doing it. When the Gente TMRG sat down at the beginning of the fiscal year, we took a survey. We were looking at each other, figuring out what do we focus on this year? And the answer came back career growth. It's something that keeps on coming up across the TMRGs is something that, we've grown so much, it can be a little daunting to figure out, okay, great, what's my next step in the career? Understanding also it's not always linear, it can also be lateral. We can be looking at opportunities outside of the divisions that we are in today. And so we wanted to take a look and do a little bit of a roadshow, see what's going on in the different divisions and what kind of opportunities exist there and what steps we can take to move if that's something that we're looking to do. So you can see the link for the career growth calendar right there in our notes doc. I did also want to shout out our disability and neurodivergence TMRG. You can see my background. That link is also in our agenda. July is Disability Pride Month. And the TMRG has provided some great asynchronous resources for everyone in Slack. So check out Rob Allen's posting if you haven't already. It is linked right there in. The session is meant to be for you all. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in our notes doc. Feel free to drop them in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand. We certainly want to make this as valuable and interactive as you all are comfortable with. So with that being said, um, I'm going to turn it over to my lovely co-host, Giuliana. Hi, Giuliana.
Hi, Pilar and everyone, thank you. Johnny, we're super excited to have you today. I think you've revealed a little bit about your background. There's something very unique and interesting. Congrats to your wife with the professional roller skating. That's so cool. So you are with us as the VP Customer Support at GitLab. Would love to understand just a little bit more about your career path and kind of what led you to the role you're in today.
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting path for myself. I've always been around the engineering area. I actually originally started off in support way back in the 80s. Um, and after about 3 years, I was then dragged into, I guess we can call it dragged into, more of the direct engineering side, where I spent a good portion of my career, about 25 years or so, in QA and actual product engineering, in development. And then I kind of got tired of a little bit of that and moved back into support. And the main reason being because I like to help people and I like to help organizations grow in how they help people. Um, and support is one of those interesting areas where it's never the same day twice. I found myself personally, I was bored with developing code and doing code. Yes, I worked on some things that were really interesting, but it's kind of like the same thing in and out every day. And it's just how I approach things. I like to make things better, improve things in the sense of what our customers' experience is. Um, with code, yes, you're always constantly refactoring and things like that. But it's like, to me, it's like, yeah, working with code is kind of boring. That's me. There's a lot of things that are real interesting. I'm still code to this day, but it's more of, around personal things. But really looking at how we can help our customers because the world of code is very complex and it's getting more complex, especially when we get into all of the other ecosystem elements around it. So I've moved back now. I've been in support now for about 13 years, 13, 14 years in leading support engineering. And, for me, it's one of those things that is really interesting because it's the intersection of our customers, the usage patterns, and understanding what they're doing with our products and being able to bring that information back into the organization, whether that be that directly into engineering, R&D, and also product, to make sure that we can influence the products to get better. So, you know, it's been a long. I've been here before the cloud and the web existed. I started in mainframes. My very, very, very first job was restringing core memory. I did a lot of things on the hardware side. Core memory is those little ferrite beads and spinning wire around it. And that used to be what memory was. And we would have these boards that were 3 foot by 3 foot that would hold a whole kilobyte of memory. Nowadays, my phone has, what has it got? 512 gigabytes of disk space. And my machine here has, 64 gigabytes of memory. It's just amazing to see how it's changed over a relatively short period of time. So.
Thank you, Johnny. I think it's a lot of people who maybe don't work as close with the engineering division don't realize that customer support is so support centric. You mentioned coding. I think a lot of people's minds immediately kind of go to that when they think of engineering. Mentioned a little bit about the value of customer support and connecting with our customers, bringing that data back within R&D. How does support fit within the engineering division overall today?
So, I report to Sabrina. So she leads up the whole of engineering. Support engineering, we're right there beside, my colleagues, Tim and Bartek and Mech. And Marin, we're all part of this. I'm more of the customer facing piece. My organization is the customer facing piece. Because, support is where when our customers are having problems, who do they call? They call us. If they're having problems understanding how to use our products, maybe in the usage, they're finding difficulties or it's not connecting up, they're going to be calling us. Through opening tickets, through Slack channels and whatever. We're there to help them understand how to get around it, or if there's a defect, we can work with engineering and get it fixed. In some cases, even support engineering could fix some of those defects for them. So we work on that side of it, and our job is help our customers. We've got a very big push about being customer centric. We're, on the front face of that, in working with our customers, whether they're paid and sometimes in the cases, some of our pre-usage customers. We work with everybody. We try to figure out what's going on. We try to help them get to getting their value out of using our products. So, and we work very closely with not just the other engineering roles, but also our go-to-market teams, our sales teams, our customer success teams, anybody, as well as the product teams, making sure that we can help our customers. Because while I may have a capital S in support, we all are supporting our customers. That's the lowercase s in support. We're all customer support engineers, everybody in GitLab. So.
I love that. Very unique in how cross-functional your department is. Before I hand it over to Pilar, you can work from anywhere at GitLab. Where have you chosen to work from?
So I was already there, but I split my time between Miami Beach, where I'm a resident down in Florida, and as well Massachusetts. Usually during the summer months, like July, August. June, July, August, I'm usually up in Massachusetts, where my family and myself have been raised. I've spent most of my life up there, but for the last 6 years, I'm a Florida resident in Miami Beach. So.
Amazing. Thank you. I will ask more questions related to that later on. Meanwhile, we'll hand it over to Pilar.
I know we love Miami and talking about all things Miami. It's such a cool, diverse scene. Okay, so you said you've always been in engineering, and so I was curious to know what exactly was it that drew you to engineering? Was it by happenstance? You just happened to be in that world? Was it something you kind of seeked out because you had a certain interest? Would love to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean, my father was probably my largest influence there. My father was in, field engineering. He ran field engineering for a company called Honeywell, starting in like 1966. These were the big mainframe computers and everything. So I grew up around computers from a very early age when there weren't really that many computers. We literally had a mainframe in our basement. Um, it was he was in between where we lived in Connecticut at the time. He worked out of New York City, but Boston was also a big area. We lived in between the two, so his we always had parts available, and so we had a running mainframe, and he was working on a DARPA project, so which was the precursor to the internet. So we were connected, via landlines. These were 100 baud modems, 30 baud to 120 baud modems, acoustic couplers, and we had a terminal, and he let me play on the terminal, which I thought was the wildest thing. I actually, he just reminded me recently, over the winter, that the first computer program I wrote was like 1974. For myself, I was 7 years old. But it was a simple script, but it was like how to move things from one of his offices in Boston to the one in New York. And I thought it was wild that I could move this thing. It was like time travel. And from that point on, I was always interested in the electronics and the hardware side of it, as well as the software. I really started in more of the hardware side, but the basic electronics and logic gates and transistors, and back then there were still tubes inside of computers. So starting from a very early, I like to take things apart and put them back together, to learn about how these things worked. So that was the beginning of my career. Now I've had lots of other things. I've been in lots of startups since then. Moved to the software side of the world probably in the mid 80s. And really loved, I mean, the software side. It's like you could do things and try things and what ifs. And all you were really doing was using some electrons. There wasn't a lot of need for physical pieces of hardware per se. It was just electrons, moving them about, and switching them on and off. So
That's so very cool. I love the time travel analogy because yeah, absolutely. It's like this magical force that gets you from here to there, somewhat invisibly. That's a very cool background, Johnny. I did not grow up with a mainframe in my house. So, but my father was an engineer, so I do also understand the love that can be transferred from an early age. And 7 years old. Okay. I've got an 8-year-old. He's behind. Got to get him coding. Um, all that being said, uh, as you've gone throughout your career, worked with a lot of different folks in engineering, is there any sort of background that most of these team members come from that you can think of? Or maybe if it's not like a typical engineering background, like what kind of skills would make for a good engineering professional, in your opinion?
well, I mean, a lot of folks I think come through, either growing up and then going into college and coming through college and having engineering as a discipline. I tried to do the college route. I went through a technical high school. I was the first graduating class that had a computer science and electronics path in high school. And I was able to graduate high school with actually an associate's degree in computer science engineering. And I immediately went and tried to go to college, and it wasn't for me. I was one of those people that was just not set out for college. Um, I'd rather do something. I'd rather do it rather than just read about it in a book. And so, there's a new acronym out that I've been learning about, which is STAR, which is Skilled Through Alternative Routes. And I was kind of one of those folks. Um, I think it's more difficult to do today, but my alternative route was I went immediately to work and started working in field engineering and support, with various different hardware as well as software. Um, and I think a lot of engineering folks, have this, the mentality and the aptitude for technology. Some of my dearest friends that I consider some of the better computer programs, and some of them have, are even somewhat famous, I guess. Most of them had like, philosophy degrees and psychology degrees. It was actually interesting, many of them do have degrees and advanced degrees in engineering, but it's really about how we look at elements. In my life, I like to work on cars and things like that, take things apart. I'm very more mechanically inclined. Um, but there's a lot of things, the aptitude of, how does this work? How can I make it better? Can I create something? Software allows us to create amazing things very quickly. And with the tools that we have available to us today, it's just amazing what we can create. When we look at AI, you know, um, it can help us. It is a tool. It's not going to replace us just yet, maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Yes,
Fingers crossed. I love that. Curiosity is what I'm hearing. Being
it really
curious, which,
is. Absolutely.
to your point, how does it work? Let's take it apart, figure it out, see if we can put it back together. That's an engineer. That is
It's a
definitely an engineering mentality.
Yeah, it's a problem solving. There's this problem that exists. What can we do to solve it?
hmm I wanted to double click on the star of it all, skills through alternative routes. I know when we met earlier before this call, you mentioned you also had a bit of a background in the hospitality industry. So I wanted to hear, what kind of skills did you pick up in your adventures in hospitality that help you in your job today?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, I think us as humans, we all need food. I happen to be a self-proclaimed foodie. I loved going out to eat in restaurants and everything. I grew up, my uncle ran restaurants in the 70s and 80s in New York City. Um, and, for those that might read some of the books around customer hospitality, customer success, customer service, there's one by Danny Meyer, which is called Setting the Table. Danny Meyer is the head of the hospitality group in New York City that has many different restaurants, including a lot of Michelin starred restaurants. I was there the day he started. He worked for my uncle. My uncle gave him his first job. He left finance and went into restaurants. I happened to be working in one of my uncle's restaurants at the time, and Danny Meyer came in as a manager. And that was where he kicked off. And this was like the early 80s. And that's where he started his progression into running one of the largest hospitality groups, at least within New York. Um, and you learn a lot about what is service, basic service. You go to a restaurant, if you have a reservation, hopefully you get seated right on time. And then you have the basic setting in front of you, your plates, your silverware, and everything. That's basic service. You expect that, maybe a glass of water. Hospitality is like that next level of making sure that people understand and appreciate the atmosphere, the ambiance. You can be nice to them. You can be kind to them. You can treat them like humans. And that's really about taking it up to that next level of just beyond just the basic service and bringing out food. How is it presented? How is it described? What advice, and being, not just reactive, like customer sits down, you feed them, they leave. Proactive is telling them about, the wines, the food, how it was prepared, where it came from, giving them more information and being proactive, getting them to come back and desire to be back there. So, how do we learning about that is how can we bring that into technology, arena? And there's a lot of ways that we can. And that's where I get drawn to, the support side of things and the customer success side of things about how can we bring hospitality to this. And this is about moving them from just a reactive stance to that more proactive and strategic levels. Sabrina put out in our 120-day report, this is a movement from reactive to that strategic level. So
That makes so much sense. And it aligns so nicely. I don't know if you saw Amanda's comment in the chat. She was actually the reactive versus the proactive, talk about how she's seen an increase in support engineers tackling development tickets. So kudos. That is some fantastic proactive work. You see something that needs fixing, and you get after it. So that's that it shows that you all are working to be uh, hospitality versus just putting things on the table. So very, very cool. Before I turn it back over to Giuliana, I was curious to see, is there anything that stands out to you as a career highlight or a key milestone so far in your engineering adventures?
Yeah, I mean, there's one would think, I've been involved with a few startups where we've gone public as well as, been bought, for very large sums of money. But, for me, it was probably the career highlight is one of my managers way back convinced me to move into management. I was always on a engineering individual contributor path. And, you know, it's not as usually these days it's more of a progression, it's a very set. Back when I was made a manager, you were just thrown into the deep end of the pool. But he told me, it's like, listen, you really need to do this. It's good for you. You're already doing it, whether you realize it or not. And for me, that was a key milestone. I moved away from engineering code or looking at code. And my job now is to engineer organizations and engineer groups of people. And code is binary. It either works or it doesn't. It's black and white. It is yes or no. It's logic. It's basic logic. Humans, wow, that's a whole different story. We are so many shades of gray. We are, and to me, that's just really interesting. Is how can we get the best out of everybody and enable them? Whether we do that through sponsorship and mentorship, many different ways that we can get the best out of everybody. And this is part of a change, and I love change. So I'm the type of person that runs towards change. I don't like things to be static. I'd rather them be dynamic. So for me, that was like when he finally convinced me, and it took about a year and a half for them to convince me, yes, management, go into management. So.
That's awesome. Thank you, Johnny.
Johnny, I think your star background is unique and inspiring in demonstrating that internal mobility and getting involved in different areas and exploring alternative routes is very possible. So wondering what advice you would have for anyone on the call who's maybe interested in getting more involved in engineering but doesn't know where to start. What tips do you have?
Um, my first tip is reach out. I mean, to myself or any one of the other leaders in engineering, reach out to a colleague, find out more about it. If you're really interested, just reach out, ask questions. That's probably the biggest thing. One of the things that I did when I found out, all right, you're making me a manager, I don't have any choice here. I went and talked to other folks and say, all right, what could I do? How can I do this? It's, ask lots of questions. I mean, this is where the curiosity comes out. It's like, all right, if you're really looking at getting into engineering, what are the skills you need? I mean, there's so many different programs now that I wish existed back when I was there. It's like, coding dojos and coding boot camps and all these different things that are just amazing opportunities to learn, and if you have, a curious and an aptitude toward technology, then, these things will definitely help make a decision, because you also might find out, yeah, that's not for me. So.
Love it. Talking, making connections, learning more. When you think about your department customer support, what key traits or skills do you see coming from your team that would be important for someone considering transitioning in?
Um, Obviously, collaboration, is a massive piece of it, because when I look at support engineering, we have to be experts on all parts of our product. There's a lot to it. And it's not just our product, the ecosystem it operates in. So collaboration is being able to ask questions and work with your colleagues. But it's also, basically the core pieces is it's more of a personality trait in the sense of you want to help people. You're going to have to want to help people, because no one wants to call support, they're not calling us when they're having a good day. It's usually their worst day. Our customers, their jobs could be on the line. And so we have to have a certain amount of empathy for that as well, in the sense that, they're having trouble. They can't get something done. That means their business value isn't able to be delivered. So we have to be empathetic towards that and make sure it's like, okay, let's understand this. Let's, ask the right questions. We also have to intuit because they may not know what we need to know. So we have to guide them through that. So patience, empathy, at least within support engineering, and as well, a true desire just to help people.
I love it. It's a mix between technical and very people oriented, which is unique.
It is kind of unique. And I mean, we can do it, and you have to, when you're talking to a developer on the other end, we have to be, kind of looking at it as a developer. If it's an administrator or someone who maybe is not skilled in our product, we have to adjust and adapt to those different types of folks and understand the situation.
Love that. Thank you. What is top of mind in support right now? Where can we keep an eye on what is highest priority for you?
I think for support engineering right now, our top priority is, customer centricity. We'd look at our three new top yearlies. We're involved with all of those, but the one that really hits with us is because of our interactions with our customers on a day-to-day basis. And we're talking about hundreds and thousands of interactions every week with our customers. That customer centricity is definitely our key area of focus, and making it such that it's easier for our customers. We want us to be the easy button that they're able to hit. And I also want it for our support engineers. We have to make sure that they're enabled. So spending the time making sure they're trained up, AI, our Duo, aspects of our product, those are all new. And how do we make sure that our customers are getting the best out of it? We need to understand it very, very deeply. So,
Love it. Last one from me for now. How can everyone on this call contribute to the engineering division's success? What's most important?
well, I think, that's a tough one. That's a good question. I think, how can everyone contribute to it? I mean, obviously, we know everybody can contribute. That's part of our credo here, and one of our key aspects. Making sure to understand what's going on in engineering. So looking at, we have our OKRs, they're out there in the issues, and they're viewable by everybody. Making sure that they understand, because when we're talking, we have some sales folks here, making sure that they understand it, what's going on in engineering. We are solving some really difficult problems. It's, we're getting into the point where it's really, really complex. Our customers are in complex environments. Making sure we understand in engineering what our customers are looking for and how they're going. Make sure that product understands that. So feedback, getting us feedback about what you're seeing. What can we do more for you in the sense of provide more information, enablement around those, to make sure that people can understand the limitations and or the possibilities with our new features and functionality in our products and how they can be used.
Thank you so much. Collaboration and customer centricity coming through as themes.
100%. And communication, right? We can keep an eye out and just keep those communication lines open. So my next question for you, Johnny, I would love to know, what's the best career advice you've received?
I had a mentor who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. It's a gentleman by the name of Bill Blake. He also had and he was a senior vice president. He was involved in White House technology, advisor roles. He was huge in the supercomputer divisions of Cray, as well as Hewlett Packard. And, at one point I was looking at, oh, you know what? I need to get a piece of paper, a diploma that says something. Um, and he also grew up in kind of a star type of approach before we knew that that type of um, acronym existed. And he's like, why do you need to go after that piece of paper? He said, you have a great background. You've already been in the industry for 20 years. What else more are you going to get out of it other than maybe some knowledge for myself? But he's like, you have the skills, ask questions, try new things. He was the one who really pushed me to look to change. Just try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you now know something that doesn't work, and you now know what you don't know. So you can adapt. So it was really about try things, look towards change, and then adapt. And if you find something that you're passionate about, just absolutely go with it.
I love that advice. And I feel like, are you reading my mind or maybe just the notes doc? Because it sets me up for my next question, which is I personally have seen I can learn a lot more from my mistakes sometimes than from my successes. So I would love to know, what's the mistake that you've learned the most from?
Well, I'm also a big believer in you learn from mistakes, not from success. Um, the largest mistake I've learned from was more on the personal side about, taking a better chance on certain things. I was a little too conservative around certain things in my life, specifically finances, and I lost out a lot on that. But, I think it's really about like, take the chance. I didn't take certain chances. And, it made for a few hard years because of that. So I know it's
That
kind
makes
of
a lot of sense.
vague, but it's like, that's, I can, I make mistakes every day, because that's something I'm going to learn from, but those are lots of little ones. But, for me, it's just like, take a chance, find out and fail fast. So, we want to fail fast, not that long drawn out failure type of mode. I'd rather fail fast, and it's like, then we can correct, then we can adapt, then we can change something.
I like that. Failing fast is always great to get to the next thing. And also, I think something important that you said also was not just take chances, not just make mistakes and learn from them, but also adapt. That's the key part of it. You're not going to learn much if you're not actually adapting behavior after those mistakes happen. So those are
Well,
great call outs.
it's one of the things, my wife and my family, as well as some of my colleagues, may think that I focus a lot on the negative elements, the negative things, but I'm focusing on the failures. So I want to celebrate failures so that we can learn from them. And sometimes I forget to not celebrate the wins as much as I should. So it may look like I'm focusing on failure all the time, but it's not that at all. It's about focusing on, what can we learn from this? How can we not repeat? I want to make different mistakes every day.
Yes, I like that too. Making sure we're making different mistakes, right? So that we can learn all those new tidbits. So yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Johnny. Giuliana, I think you have the next question.
Yes. Jenny, we talked a little bit earlier this week about living in Miami. I said I would ask more questions about this, so here I go. And the unique experience that it's been for you there living in a community that is predominantly Latino, and how you've connected to the culture and how that's impacted your view on things like allyship and mentorship, and diversity in general. So I'm wondering how you've taken where you live into building diverse organizations. What are some of the benefits that you see in diversity, both in your community and in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, from a diversity perspective, I mean, I want as diverse a possible organization we can ever have, because then we have these different viewpoints. Um, you know, People with different cultural backgrounds and everything like that, I think is key. That's one of the reasons my wife and I were drawn to Miami, specifically because it's so diverse compared to where we were raised in Massachusetts. We're also drawn to the Latino culture. We're both attempting badly to learn Spanish, which is, a different language. I can work in different computer languages. Speaking languages I have a little more difficulty with, at least speaking it. But it's like the diversity of, Miami is just amazing. I mean, and it is more Latino based, but we have, you know, our friends down there are Venezuelan, Dominican, Puerto Rican, um, uh, Cubano, all over, wherever, we go. Huge Argentinian influence down there where I happen to live, which is known as Little Argentina. I've invested in an Argentinian bodega, cafe style. And friends of ours created a brand that I helped them create called Niñas Only. And it really is, it's all women. They needed a little bit of capital, so we were able to help them out. But it's also being involved in how they market and go out. Um, and my wife and I are just, absolutely drawn to this. And I mean, those that know me, I'm a big hugger, so that fits right in as well. Um, but it really is, when we look at this in a technology, I want to diverse an organization as we possibly can. I spent a lot of time, involved with DE and I, in our case, DIB, which I actually prefer the belonging aspect of things. Um, Making sure that we have a diverse organization because it is that thought, it is that background, it is how they approach problem solving. We need that. Um, and my oldest, both of my daughters are both in the school system. Um, my youngest daughter is on the administrative side. My oldest daughter is a kindergartner teacher for the last 5, 6 years. And, instilling in their kids, we have to do it from an early age that, you know, um, you know, science, technologies, and everything like that are open to all. Um, Especially when we're looking at the various different genders. My daughter's very heavily involved with technology because they grew up around me and my father, um, and making sure that they can, you know, pass this on to the next generation because this is something that we need to look at from a generational perspective. Um, but looking at all of these different ways that we can take in whether, how do we approach and create candidates around various different URGs, various different cultures, various different genders, whatever you may choose. How do we draw those in and make sure that we're accepting and give them the opportunities, whether it be sponsorship, mentorship, allyship. So we have to do it.
Lots of nodding heads over here. Couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more, Johnny. Thank you for bringing that top of mind. And I did want to call out, I know we're technically over time, and I want to make sure that we're respectful of yours. So if you need to drop, by all means, you're welcome to do so. We just wanted to really thank you for spending this time with us. This is such great information. Love the diverse background and perspective, as well as your commitment to ensuring we continue to make engineering diverse. It is something that we can all contribute to, and that needs to happen. We
Yeah.
absolutely are with you.
And I have an ask for everybody here is help me find new candidates within not just support engineering, but all of engineering as we're reaching out, in the various different areas across the globe, um, for hiring and everything. So help us, bring in that diversity, you know, your friends, your partners, your acquaintances that you think would be fits here at GitLab, make sure to have those references, bring them in. We could use the help. Our recruiting team is phenomenal, but we can always use more.
Agreed. This is all of our jobs to make sure we're giving opportunity also, as much as we've received it. So we'll make sure to link to the referral process as well. For those who have someone in mind who think that would be a good fit, don't forget, it doesn't have to be an engineer background. We like
No.
STAR as well. And then I do have some quick wrap ups. Again, Johnny, if you need a drop, please don't feel like you have to hop on. But I wanted to make sure that I let everyone know to please join us next week. We'll be sitting down with Dominique Top from our Disability and Neurodivergence TMRG, and then with Denise and Darva to talk about feedback for career growth. If you don't have this on your calendar, you can always join the Gente Google group. It is on all the participating TMRG Google group calendars as well. So definitely join a TMRG. And if you haven't joined one, you are always welcome with Gente. We have our program issue there so you can see what other things are coming. This is a 12-month nurture sequence we are tackling. And then a reminder, the Gente TMRG executive sponsor is our very own CISO, Josh Lemos, and you can schedule a career chat with Josh by tagging his EBA Marissa in the EBA Slack channel. And we have some details on that in our notes doc as well. And all of this is in service to our GitLab team members. We want you to feel like you have a place to grow, and that place is here at GitLab. So if you have any suggestions, thoughts, we're all ears. Everyone can contribute. Thank you again, Johnny and Giuliana, and thank you to everyone who made the time to sit with us live. And for those of you watching at home, we will see you around the virtual office. Take care, everyone. Happy weekend.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.